All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's get right to it. We got Congressman Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, how you doing this morning, sir?
I am doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Really glad that you could spend some time with us this morning. So I was just telling folks in the first hour how I wouldn't want to be you. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes after the Democrats have taken over, and you're having to deal with this, this insanity where they can't even condemn anti-Semitism.
That was just unbelievable. The thing that they did, they'll never want to acknowledge this, but the thing they did was they just basically heaped further insult on folks who have been victimized by anti-Semitism by their inability to act appropriately and to call it out. In contrast, Steve King was roundly rebuked by name in a resolution. Mm-hmm. He was specifically by name. And it wasn't buried in the text of the deal. It led with a whereas Steve King said X, Y, and Z. And not only that, he voted for the resolution condemning that. So at least he showed contrition.
Yes.
And I will say this, that our majority leader, Kevin McCarthy, he had the courage to call him out and put that a resolution on the floor. And this woman is being given every reason to continue her behavior. And she's not being called out. And the way they... Look, I tried to read this bill multiple times, and they kept changing it. And so they can't even follow their own rules. They said they're going to strictly adhere to the 72-hour rule. And they kept throwing this thing out and throwing this thing out. I mean, they have no intention of following any kind of rules at all. It was an absolute debacle, and my record of support for the nation of Israel, my record against anti-Semitism or any kind of hate speech is unassailable.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna tell you this: I voted for that unequivocally no, because it was such a ridiculous show.
Oh yeah, it was a show, and the Democrats who are trying to who are on the side of getting a real resolution condemning anti-Semitism. For them, I just want to be like, and this is politically incorrect, but you're shocked. I mean, she's a congresswoman that prescribes to the faith of Islam, and she doesn't like Jews. Surprise. I mean, this is not something that's new. This is, in my opinion, is to be expected. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. I know you're short on time this morning. I wanted to get your thoughts. Paul Manafort only sentenced to 47 months. The left is freaking out. The judge seemed to think this wouldn't have even existed. His crimes wouldn't have even been brought to the forefront if it wasn't for Donald Trump. I am just so ready to get the FISA. I want it declassified. I want the American people, I want the press to have to report on what really happened, and I know you as a member of the House Intelligence Committee do as well. Do we know when some of these documents may be declassified?
Well, they might be declassified when Mueller presents his findings and that becomes public. But there's some supporting documents, obviously, that would have to. The president has the authority to declassify at any point in time, and so ultimately, I think it's going to come down to his decision. He's been hesitant to do that. Not really sure I understand why he's been so hesitant to do that, because it would really provide a whole lot of context and eliminate a whole lot of the the speculation and the conjecture that's out there surrounding this issue. But I'm not gonna question his decision on when and if to declassify, but I do think it would clear up a whole lot of confusion on the part of the American people who are kind of wondering just exactly what did happen, and quite frankly, we've got to correct this issue with FISA.
I mean, it really was. I mean, I know you've said this on the show before. The only Russia collusion was with the Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's clear. And so the people like Adam Schiff continue to push that line, and they're going to find Russia collusion. Look, they've had 2 years and they've not presented any evidence at all, and yet he will go on national media and claim that he has just circumstantial evidence, but hard evidence that proves that there was Russia collusion, and yet they haven't found any. And I guess the arrogance of Adam Schiff, that he thinks that Mueller, with all of his authority and all of the resources he has at his disposal, and the 30-odd years of experience that he brings to the table, that he couldn't find Russia collusion, but boy, Adam Schiff can, because he's just that good. Mm-hmm. So now listen, for 2 years we've been hearing from Adam Schiff and the others that Mueller was an individual of unassailable character. He was the guy for the job, and we just need to let this thing play out. And then when they start to hear that maybe Mueller's going to come forward with some findings that don't necessarily comport with their narrative, then they start the undermining Mueller and the discrediting of Mueller, because they're trying to set themselves up to be the credible ones. Mm-hmm. So, and we're CNN and MSNBC and all of this. Do they not remember hearing the Democrats in Washington talking about, we've got to let the Mueller investigation play out. We've got to trust Mueller. Mueller's the right guy for the job. Yada yada yada. Well, now all of a sudden that's changed. Mueller now is no good, because he's going to come forward with findings that they don't like, so they're going to do everything they can to discredit him in advance, so that the findings are then diminished.
Yeah, and then they're going to go on with the subpoenas. You've got Jerry Nadler and the Judiciary, and they're trying to, he even said this in his media tour, they're trying to convince the American people, and they want these investigations to continue until the last vote is counted November 2020, right?
Oh, no question about it. And so, the number of subpoenas they've got going out, I bet few, if any, have anything to do with Russia in the first place. They're going after financial stuff. They're going after his family. They're going after process crimes. They're trying to set perjury traps. Anything they can do to try and, continue to diminish everything that the president has accomplished to date and weaken him going into the 2020 election. And there's been no introspection at all on this on their part. Like, where did you go wrong in 2016? What can you do differently that might actually result in a different outcome? That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
They are so enraged that their candidate didn't win that they can't focus on anything else.
Last question, Congressman Rick Crawford. Is there any optimism up there among your Republican colleagues in the House about the idea of taking back the House of Representatives, because the left has gone so far to the left, socialists, Alexandria Cortez, and maybe the American people are going to be reminded just what the values of the Democrat Party are? Is there any optimism?
Absolutely. We're extremely optimistic, and every time AOC opens her mouth, the needle swings, pushes further in our direction. And same thing with this Omar from Minnesota and several others. This woman from Massachusetts that put forth an amendment yesterday to allow for 16-year-olds to vote. It's things like that that doesn't square with people who live and work in rural America and flyover country. That may be fine up in Boston, New York City, but it's just not going to play, in the heartland. And people are starting to see this. They're not starting to see it. It's on full display. And so, like I said, they got bigger problems in 2020 than they realize. And it starts with 3 or 4 members in the caucus, and of course Pelosi's abject failure as a leader, and her inability to lead on the basic issue of condemning anti-Semitism. Come on. You can't even manage that. So, and, you think the Freedom Caucus is a problem for Republicans. My goodness. Not even close. Not even close.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. Well, Congressman Rick Crawford, it's always a pleasure to have you on, sir. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, man.
Okay, have a great weekend. Folks, we'll have a copy of this interview up at